Alright, here's my audience.
Oh, I see. Yes, I do.
There we go. Alright. So everybody knows that the newspaper industry is generally on the decline, but the question is why. So daily newspapers are becoming more and more obsolete. I think it's safe to say that in 10 years, daily newspapers are going to go by the wayside and weekly editions are going to become more popular. The reason I've looked into this more thoroughly is because I'm a journalism major, so it interests me as to where journalism is going in the future. So Google News, which launched in 2002, is the main reason for the newspaper industry's decline because it's basically made news just easier to get, faster to get. So with all the new technology, people are using more computers, so that's why Google News is kind of taken over as opposed to a traditional newspaper. Just to give a little background info on what Google News is. Um, on Google.com, Google News is defined as a computer-generated news site that aggregates headlines from news sources worldwide, groups similar stories together, then displays them according to each reader's personalized interest. So the main points I'll be covering are that since Google News has launched, newspaper companies have created online versions of the newspaper to accommodate for this change. Um, it's changed the future of journalism and what a journalist does, what a journalist kind of defines as. And then people seeking information can now get their news faster than ever because of Google News. So the first real impact is that newspapers are kind of making their online version more prominent as opposed to their print. So with the shift to online, the key for newspapers to kind of stay alive is to generate ad revenue online as opposed to print. Um, so you see most, news outlets um, trying to, instead of shifting their money towards journalists, which they still have journalists obviously, but devices like tablets and computers that can transform into tablets and all this new technology, um, leads the way to different jobs as opposed to journalism. Jobs in fields like developing apps that can work for people, using their smartphones or whatever to get news online. Um, Ads haven't exactly vanished, but they've changed, like I said, from print to online. Um, just a stat on ad revenue as far as newspapers go. According to the stateofthemedia.org, in 2005, total ad revenue totaled 49.4 billion, and then in 2009, just 4 years later, it totaled 27.6 billion, which is nearly half as much. Another thing that Google News has done through the newspaper industry is change the future of journalism. So, like I said before, what a journalist means, um, that's changed because of Google News. News companies, like I said, have changed the use of their money, so there's less journalists being hired. So with less journalists being hired, there's still the same amount of news going on out there. So they just have to do more. And with social media being more prominent, a journalist's job is just different than what it used to be. A sports reporter, for example, if you're at a game, you can usually you have to write two different stories, one for online, the second it's done, and then the other story will be, in the daily newspaper or the weekly edition. So they're having to write another story as opposed to just one. Like I was talking about before with social media, a journalist can log into Foursquare, say that they're at that place. They can post a cool picture on Instagram. You can go on Twitter and live tweet what's going on in the game. So people that aren't at the game can go on Twitter, which is a social media site, and just follow the game with you. And then a Facebook poll, who's leading at the half, who you think's going to win. There's all these different social media um, outlets now that let a journalist who's covering a game, just for example, to be able to communicate with the people that just usually follow the story online the day after or the week after. So it just creates a bond for the reporters and the readers now, more so than the weekly paper did. And ultimately, what Google News has done, most importantly, is just make the news easier to get for people. By making the news faster and easier to get, um, that's kind of what's paved the way for journalists and social media to kind of get a boom in popularity, I guess, is because before Google News, you had your traditional newspaper, and now getting news online just kind of changes the way news is came about in the last 10 years or so. More so to the downfall of newspapers and how Google News has kind of revolutionized the industry. If you're a consumer of news, do you want to buy your weekly paper or your daily paper, or do you want to go online for free and find the same exact stories you would have online? Also with online, um, you don't have to sift through the lifestyle section or the news section if you're looking for a sports article, or if you hate sports, then you don't even have to read the sports section or pass through it. You can just click on lifestyle on the computer's website. So it's just more convenient for the consumer of news. Many companies have changed the content exclusively, more so in the near last few years. 2008 was kind of when most groups transitioned from print to online. According to Boston.com in 2009, newspaper publishers reduced their news staff or newsroom staff by 5,200 jobs. Also in 2009, because the industry struggles, the newspaper editors convention was canceled. This was the first time that was canceled since the start of World War II. In 2009, also, the shift to online kind of didn't work well for InDenverTimes.com. So not all these shifts to online have worked perfectly. For that site specifically, they attempted to get 50,000 online subscribers to just pay $5 a month, and they failed and reached 3,000 as opposed to their 50,000 that they wanted to get. With Google News, it just allows people to find the news faster. So online is becoming more prominent, and newspapers are quickly fading away. In conclusion, since the launch of Google News, like I said, more online newspapers have came about. What a journalist does and what the journalist means exactly today has changed because of Google News. And what Google News has ultimately done is just jump-started the transition from getting your news on a traditional newspaper to online.